Good evening, everyone. My name is Bernard Grayson. I am the National President of the University of the District of Columbia National Alumni Society. Thank you all for joining us in our inaugural Alumni Connections panel. Tonight, I would like to highlight the importance of our first panel as it reflects lots of hard work done behind the scenes to ensure more engaged conversations happen between our alums. Listening to your requests, we are working hard at the National Alumni Society to create programming that is pertinent to our current student body and alums alike. The University of the District of Columbia has a very rich history. I was researching on the university website today, and I found this piece that I wanted to share with you. The public higher education in the district is rooted in the School of Colored Girls that Matilda Minor founded in 1851 in Washington, D.C., which came to be called the Minor Normal School. Washington Normal School, a school for white girls, was established in 1873, was renamed Wilson Normal School in 1913 after James O. Wilson, Washington, D.C.'s first superintendent of public schools in 1929. Congress enacted a statute that converted both the normal schools into four-year teachers' colleges. For several years, Miners Teachers College and Wilson's Teachers College were the only institutions of public higher education in the city. After landmark U.S. Supreme Court school desegregation decision, Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954, the two colleges merged in 1955 to form the District of Columbia Teachers College. Over the next decade, DC residents petitioned for the expansion of higher education that would provide training for careers other than teaching. In 1966, Congress enacted the District of Columbia Public Education Act, which established Federal City College and Washington Technical Institute. Although these schools were still very new, many Washingtonians continued to advocate for a comprehensive university. The DC City Council authorized the consolidation of 3 schools in 1976. This began the monumental task of creating the University of District of Columbia. In 1977, under President Jimmy Carter's leadership, the University of the District of Columbia began consolidating its academic programs. These efforts culminated in the establishment of 5 colleges: Business and Public Management, Education and Human Ecology, Liberal and Fine Arts, Life Sciences, Physical Science, Engineering and Technology, and the University College and Continuing Education. The University of the District of Columbia continues to transform itself over time to meet the challenges and needs of its students and the community. Embracing its essence as the public, historically Black, urban-focused land-grant university in the nation's capital, the University of the District of Columbia is dedicated to serving the needs of the community, the District of Columbia, and producing lifelong learners who are transformative leaders of our workforce, government, nonprofit sectors, and beyond. I affectionately call it the U. Since taking this road, it has been our goal to lift the voices, share our passions, and bring the outside into our world so that they would better know who we are and more about our beloved UDC. Tonight, it is my pleasure to bring to you 3 of our top alumni. They're all lawyers. We didn't do that on purpose. It's just how we're going to start this first conversation. Our goal this evening is to have you hear their stories, let them share their successes, and hopefully answer a few questions along the way. Again, thank you all for joining. And please don't hesitate to ask questions in the chat box or email me post-meeting. I will share my email address with you in the box. But at this time, let's bring on the panelists and our moderator. Thank you all for joining us.
So thank you guys very much for joining us this evening. My name is Darnell Burtin. I'm the managing partner of the Burtin Group, LLC. President Grayson has been so kind and has worked with me really hard. And don't you say anything, Mr. Grayson. But he's asked me to come on tonight and moderate your inaugural panel. But even more than that, I think the biggest part of this conversation is really telling human stories, right? Knowing Bernard as long as I've known him, over a decade, and having conversations with him, one of the things that he's been really adamant about as part of tonight's conversation is, how do we really lift the human voices of the folks that are at UDC? And even more than that, how do we judge a university except by its product, and its product being its graduates, right? And so tonight, what we hope to do is if I can give you guys a little bit of the run of the show, what we hope to do tonight is, one, I'm going to introduce myself, and I'm really kind of irrelevant here. I'm just kind of a gatekeeper, saying hello, goodbye, and pushing people to the right spaces. And then once I finish with that, I'm going to ask each of the panelists themselves to spend a little bit of time introducing themselves, but not just to introduce themselves, but to tell part of the human story, right? How did they really, where are they from? Where did they go to school? And then how did they get to UDC? Because the question here is, why UDC, even more than anything. So a little bit about myself. I'm Darnell Burtin, husband of one, father of three, born and raised in Chicago. I've been in DC for the past, 15, almost 16 years. I own my own firm. I've worked at organizations like Georgetown, American University, Special Olympics, YMCA, done about $2.5 to $3 billion on the nonprofit side, but spent a lot of my time here lately moderating some of these executive conversations with fantastic panelists and fantastic people like yourselves. And so this evening, we have three fantastic folks that, and I'm just going to call them by the first names first, and then let them really dive into who they are. LaRuby, Micheal, and Natasha, all of whom are graduates in some shape or form at the University of District of Columbia. And so we're going to jump right in and ask Mike. Mike, can you talk a little, I'm sorry, Micheal, can you talk a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and give the audience a little bit more robust information on Micheal Lyles?
Yeah, okay. Well, I am sixth generation Washingtonian by birth.
Oh, here we go.
I was born in Northeast in Trinidad, moved to Southeast Congress Heights when I was young. Went to Catholic school, went to Gonzaga, graduated in 1980, and thought that I was going to take the path of becoming an astronaut, and found my way to aerospace engineering at Iowa State University. Didn't know that I wanted to practice law, but at some point during the process of matriculating at Iowa State, ran out of money and ran out of love and ran out of a whole bunch of things, and joined the Army, came back to the District of Columbia, and between Howard and UDC stuck out as the one that would take most care of me at the time. Being at a distance, it was hard to transfer at a distance. And if you've ever been in that situation, really taking care of myself and my own education, it's really difficult when you don't have anybody to make the calls and run the paper and all that. I called Howard and they said, well, I got to do it all myself. And I was about to go to basic training like in 2 weeks. And UDC, I found a willing listener to my situation, and she took care of everything. And all I had to do was go to basic training, then show up at school in August. After basic training, I did that. It was pretty easy, and I really enjoyed myself at UDC. And I was really impressed by what UDC was trying to do at that time, which was to bring the university up to national standards. And with the change in major from engineering to business, it was a right move for me. Since then, I've been a practicing lawyer in the DMV, licensed in DC and Maryland for over 25 years, 26 years, practicing mostly in the area of business law and litigation. And currently, I am the city attorney for the city of Annapolis, Maryland.
Mike, thank you for that.
I'm married and have 2 kids and 3 grandchildren.
Yeah, look, we know we need to say that on these things just in case it gets out that we didn't mention who we really work for, right? Mike, you said something really key in there. And before I go over to LaRuby and Natasha, can you talk about that military piece? And then can you also talk about that? Because I think timing is really big here, right? So we're talking in the 80s when there wasn't the internet, right? So you couldn't do all the things online. And you talked about that personal approach that when you called Howard, they said, you got to do it, versus when you called EC and someone extended themselves to you. Did you go full-time Army, or were you like reserves? And then
I was in reserves, and I was attracted to the reserves because I could help pay for college at the time. I'm a struggling student, without a lot of parental support to go to college, almost none really, you know.
Oh, wow.
I was on scholarship at Gonzaga, you know, I was a, you know, kind of poor kid from Southeast who had great grades. And so, you know, academics was important to me, and somebody just, you know, one of the nuns pulled me up and said, "You're going to Gonzaga." And I was like, "What is Gonzaga?" You know?
Okay.
So, so I was on the trajectory to do, I think, great things, and wanted to be an astronaut and all that kind of stuff. When I got glasses, that fell apart. And life, like with boxing, is everybody can box until you get that first hit, right?
Oh, yeah.
And your mind changes. And I think life is like that as well. Everybody can live the life they want to live until things happen. You know, you lose money, you lose your parents, you lose whatever resources you need to succeed. And you have to shift and adjust, and you have to be resilient. And one of the things that I think UDC helped me with was help me in my resiliency, because I'm a resilient person. And, you know, it was the right thing to do, the right place, the right time. And, you know, I really treasure the time I spent in class there. And, you know, when I came back, I was a full-time student and worked 3 or 4 jobs, you know, to make ends meet, plus in the Army, plus being in the Army. So, you know, and I had to do duty once a month. So, you know, it's a thing, but we survived, we made it work. And UDC, the class is a great experience, a lot of great professors. And I left there as the outstanding graduating senior from the College of Business. While I was there, I served as treasurer of the student government and chaplain of the senior class in 1986. So we had a lot of good things going on at school at that time, and a lot of moving parts. You know, we went through a couple of presidents, but the experience was one that I treasure and has made me who I am today.
Mike, thank you for that, Mike. I really appreciate that. So just so everybody knows, please, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you want to say something to Mike, like I see somebody says, shout out Chair Lyles, SBPA from the School of Business. And please, each of the speakers mention what school you graduated from, whether it's law school, business, or other. And then Mike, will you share where you went to law school?
Well, first I want to say hello to Savon Waldron, who's vice chair of the school business Dean's Advisory Board. I'm the chair, but Savon is coming right behind me, really great alum as well, serving with me. But I went to Catholic University. So by the time I finished school, I got a great job as I left school at UDC, graduated, and worked in corporate America for a couple of years. And at some point I decided I wanted to go to law school. I transitioned from corporate America to the Department of the Navy as a contract specialist in the contracting intern program. The intern program is a 3-year program where they teach you all about contracts and procurement for the federal government and DOD. And I finished the program in 18 months. Wow. It's a 3-year program. Plus, I was going to law school at night. I went to Catholic University, and Catholic was one of the few schools that I applied to that had an evening program, because by that time I was married, had 1 child at least, and you know, it presented an opportunity for me to get what I thought would be a great adjunct to my experience in contracting, which was a law degree. Fantastic.
So just so everyone knows, again, my name is Darnell, Burtin, managing partner of the Burtin Group. I see there's some new folks come in. Somebody says Army veterans, great to hear. That's from Brother Mike Myers. The other part about this is like Mike is doing, please add your comments, your questions, other in the chat box. We are spending some time with Mike because he has to leave us at 6:30. I'm going to pivot here really quickly to LaRuby May to speak a little bit. But Mike, I have a few questions for you after LaRuby, and then we're going to spend some time with Natasha. Mike, thank you so very much for telling us your story. Southeast, Northeast, Gonzaga, Iowa State. You were a long way away from home in Iowa State, brother.
Well, you know, that was a long way from home, but you know, I had my fraternity brothers in Omega Psi Phi to help make things more better.
Look, Ruby's laughing at you, right? Look, Michael, we'll have to talk about 72 hours of Omega one day. So, LaRuby, please go ahead. Thank you.
So good evening, and thank you to to the chair, President Grayson, and to the Alumni Association for the opportunity to kind of speak, and for the leadership in terms of making sure that we understand that the connection is what really allows for us to leverage the resources of our institution, right? Like being able to know that we have people that are the city attorneys for Annapolis, and that we have folks that are, that are affiliated with us in some way, doing things that allow for us to do things with them and do things better in kind of service. So again, thank you for that. And they said, introduce yourself. I like to tell people things that they generally won't know about me, and the things that are important for me in terms of how it is that I get to this place to be able to speak. And so that is that, I'm from Pensacola, Florida, via Alabama. My parents, my grandmother mopped floors, cleaned toilets.
Wait. So LaRuby, I gotta jump in. We talked a long time, and you didn't tell me my people from Alabama too. So we're gonna have to have that outside.
Gotcha. Well, yeah.
So I'm from Chicago, so everybody from Mississippi and Alabama usually came up through the, the Great Migration and the Pullman Porters. And I'm finding on the East Coast, everybody this way comes from North and South Carolina up this kind of a traverse. So I apologize. Sometimes I'm a history buff, so continue to go. Continue.
No. So I mean, I think it's important to understand kind of like, understand our history about where it is that we got to and the privileges that we have. I'm very privileged to be the first lawyer in my family, first generation. Had the privilege of going to UDC Law School as the law school for me. I had been in predominantly white institutions my entire life, elementary, middle, high school, undergraduate school. I did my graduate work at George Washington University, where there were very few folks that looked like me. So it was very intentional for me to want to go and have an HBCU experience to really kind of really complete what I would say is my educational experience.
So I want to jump in there because I forgot to mention that, and I apologize. I put that on when I posted this on LinkedIn, that UDC is an HBCU, and I don't think most folks really understand that. And I want to highlight that UDC is, Howard is not the only HBCU in Washington, D.C., right? I think that's really, really important. And thank you for you highlighting that, LaRuby. I think that's critical, not just for the folks that might be on this panel, but the folks that'll watch this, future tense, that UDC isn't, look, numbers, President Grayson just wrote the number 17 HBCU in the country. And so I know, and LaRuby, as you're speaking about this, I want you to really talk about, because your school is the law school, and someone else has put the only public, the best HBCU in DC and the only public. So look, guys, keep it coming. I love it. But what I was going to say is, I really want you to highlight the law school, because the law school is ranked really high as well. But let me back up. Want to hear your whole story. Would love to hear your whole story.
Well, again, that kind of, there's always different paths that we all take in terms of our story to how we get here. I think, again, that the reason that I start with, the hard work that my grandparents and great aunts and folks who came before me, and the folks who sold dinners at churches and stuff like that, like their journey kind of impacts the blessing that I get to do because I went to law school and able to practice law. So I think that really, the details of that really are very similar to a lot of people who have very similar stories that look like me in terms of their journey of how it is that they were able to get to where they are. And I'm just very fortunate that a part of my journey, I was able to attend an HBCU law school. And, I had the privilege of attending the Bayou Classic, doing some webinars this past weekend. And it really affirmed for me kind of why I believe that the next generation of my family should have an HBCU experience, and so that they can understand and see that those connections and those relationships that allow you to be successful while you're in the education experience, but it also allows for you to be successful once you get out of the educational experience, because by and large, HBCUs are graduating more graduates than PWIs. We're graduating more engineers, we're graduating more lawyers, we're graduating more people. So as you grow in your professional world and you're in professional settings, you're going to be very likely to engage with other individuals from HBCUs. And as we do that and increase our footprint at UDC, I think that it begins to lay a great foundation for great success for alumni at the institution.
Fantastic. So I was going to ask a lot, but I was kind of enthralled, and it looks like everybody's agreeing with you with everything that's coming into the chat box. Again, let me pause. Please ask your questions, put everything into the chat box. I see you guys are telling me, look, what are some of the cool parts that I've heard? Only land grant HBCU, oldest HBCU in DC, number 17 HBCU in the country, only public HBCU in DC. So,
and Darnell, if I could
please go ahead. I'm
just
quiet.
to say, I think it's important for those of you, but before we got on with everyone else, I was able to say that, you know, the opportunity to be connected to UDC Law School. I think it's important to know that Jean Kemper-Kahn is the only Black woman in the history to start a law school. She's the only one to ever do it, and it's never been done since her. Right. I think that's important about the legacy of UDC and its law school. And I think if you go back to the origination of Antioch Law School, if you talk to folks who graduated then, they lived in Southeast. They lived with their clients as a part of their legal journey. So the legacy of UDC and what we do for our community as HBCUs is very strong, and one that, again, I think that provides an opportunity for us to be proud to be attached to such an institution.
LaRuby, that was powerful. So LaRuby's not tooting her own horn, so I am going to a little bit. She was most recently inducted to the UDC Law School Hall of Fame. And I know she told me that she didn't want to talk about this, but she came right behind Marion Barry and served as council person in Ward 8. And so I think some of these things are really important to highlight, because I want folks that are either on today or in future tense to really understand the power of this first panel that President Grayson, Bernard Grayson, has put together. And we haven't even gotten to our rock star who has 3 degrees from UDC yet. We're getting ready to get to her. LaRuby, one question before you go, and I asked you this earlier. You said you don't know why you were chosen. Should I bring Bernard on to talk about why you were chosen for that honor? Or look, someone said LaRuby is a legend. Talk to me about
literal legend.
You're a legend, right? So, but I want you to spend some time, LaRuby, really talking about, because you said to me, Darnell, while serving Ward 8 was a great thing, here's the thing that really has been transformative in my life. Will you talk about that thing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a great privilege to succeed Marion Barry, because no one can replace him, but the privilege to succeed him in representing our people is a great privilege that I'm grateful that I was allowed to have. But when you serve as a legislator, you kind of serve from a 30,000-foot perspective, and it becomes hard, although the needs of our people are really on the grassroots level. Your job description is legislative, right? It's about laws and it's about policies. And so I appreciated that. But when Mayor Bowser granted me the privilege to be the chair of the United Medical Center here in Southeast, during COVID, right, there were decisions that I was privileged and burdened, right, to make that were real life decisions, like whether or not people really lived or died, right? And
so let me
hope.
pause you. Let me stand in that for a second, because again, the number one important thing, I always tell people, how do you judge a university? You judge it by its products, right? And the number one product you judge it by is its alumni, right? People often, you hear about Alabama Crimson Tide, they got football, and Mike, I'm gonna go to your school, I know the Cyclones. But really what you talk about is when you become 5 and 10 and 15 years removed, what do your alums have to say about your school? And how do they represent themselves in the community and in the global community? And LaRuby, if you would continue to talk about that, in the short term, what you were talking about, that life or death piece, I don't think it gets any bigger than that. And here's one of your alum that's making those life or death decisions here locally and globally. So.
No, again, it's just, we all get the privilege of service, right? So a friend of mine told me years ago that the greatest privilege in life is to serve. And then he said, but when those of us have opportunity to have resources to serve, then that responsibility is even more significant, because generally speaking, all people want to serve. Right? It's just whether or not you have the resources to be able to serve. And I've been very privileged and very blessed to have opportunities and to sit at seats where I've had resources to be able to serve my people differently than my mama could serve them, differently than my grandma and them can serve them, even though, again, they serve them in the ways that they could, that was, again, ultimately beneficial for our people. So again, I think, my journey at UDC, at the law school, with the clinics and with being able to kind of really highlight and take pride in our local history. I mean, probably my greatest, if there's a legacy, I don't know that I agree that there's one, but if there's a legacy at UDC that I will leave is, and we were able to name the the Balsa chapter after William C. Pryor. Judge Pryor is one of the greatest legal minds to ever walk the District of Columbia. Judge Pryor could have taught at any law school in this country, but he chose to teach at the public law school in Washington, D.C., so that little kids from Pensacola like myself and little kids like Lawrence from Southeast D.C. could go into a classroom in a public institution law school and meet great thinkers and great law decision makers like himself. And so to be able to kind of be a part of the naming of that chapter in the honor and the legacy of Judge Pryor is, if that can give me legacy, then, I'll take that.
LaRuby, I appreciate that. Natasha, I haven't forgot about you. Michael, I've got you for 5 more minutes. Can I bring you back on?
Sure.
You just heard LaRuby speak. I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to say coming behind what she had to say about the legacy of UDC. I saw your eyes and your head nod, and I didn't know if there was anything you wanted to say to that. And then I was going to ask you 1 or 2 parting questions.
Well, I mean, LaRuby said it all. I mean, I clerked at the same time. I think Judge Pryor was in senior status in Superior Court, so I'm well aware of his legacy, and we really appreciate the work and service that LaRuby has contributed to our life in the District of Columbia and beyond. I don't live currently in the District of Columbia, but I do work in the District of Columbia, and I'm licensed there. And it matters to me that great people are elected to office. But for me, I think legacy is really what you do every day. And, for us in the business school, we think we have the best business school in the city. It won't be anything unless people contribute their time, their talent, and their money.
Time, talents, and treasures, right? Time, talents, and treasures.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta get past some of the old thinking that somebody owes me something and then I'll contribute. No, we have to contribute first, because it's only if our students can shine with the additional resources that we can provide that our degree on the wall means anything. See, if we're graduating great students, if we're teaching great students, our degree gets better. And so we have to contribute real money, real dollars, even if everybody on this call contributed $5, $10, $20 one time in a year. The way that foundational and institutional fundraising works is we look at how many people who in your alumni group contribute, and everybody has to contribute. So if 100 people spend $10, we would get more money from other philanthropists outside of the university. So we have to start thinking bigger, broader, and better about how we can contribute our money, our real money, to the university and to the things that matter for the university today.
So Mike, thank you for that, because let me tell you why. Brother Grayson and I have had that conversation, and you heard me talk about, I work on campaigns and I work on strategies. The hardest thing that I'm having conversations with across all schools, but particularly HBCUs, is having people understand that you're not a lot of folks are having the conversation saying, well, Darnell, I paid, I went to college. And I'm like, I understand that, but your dollar, your $1, your $2, your $5, or your investment is future tense, and you're paying it forward, because those students that were like you have to understand, if you get 100% participation from your board and your alumni, just like you said, then those institutional investors and those corporate investors and those family foundations say, this is a place where I'll put my money, because the people that went here believe in the mission of what's happening here. Exactly. Mike, let me ask you this before you go, because I know you have to go. 2 questions. Why UDC? And tell me what was the most transformative thing in your life that happened at UDC?
Well, why UDC is pretty simple, because the people at UDC who were working actually did everything they could do to assist me in transferring from Iowa State back home. And they did it in such a seamless way that I was able to enroll. At that time, leaving Iowa State, I would have probably gone anywhere in the DC area, but I looked at the HBCUs first. And, it was just such a pleasure to work with the administrators I work with and the folks who didn't know me from a can of paint, but knew I wanted to enroll. And that $256, for 12 credits wasn't bad either, because I was paying for it myself. But transformative, I mean, I think the transformative things is that there were so many. I think being a part of the senior class in '86, watching the school kind of transform from this kind of, institution where people didn't really care about it, to an institution that at one point had over 14,000 students, right? And everybody wanted to be at UDC. We just had such a great mass of people, a lot of them transfers, some of them from the city and other places, who really kind of made UDC kind of an enjoyable campus to be on. And all the Greek letter organizations were there. I mean, it was just, the basketball team was doing good. I mean, everything was popping. And we were just right in the middle of everything, and everybody wanted to be here. And so I think it's just the whole experience was transformative for me.
I appreciate that. Last thing, how do we get it back to that?
Well, first of all, I think alum need to come and visit the school today. They need to be ready to write a check today, and they need to talk to some of the students who are there and get a sense of where the school is going, where we, what new vision we have for the buildings, for the students. Talk to the president. I know we'll have a new president soon, but kind of get some conversation going with folks that are there now. I think that's the biggest thing, and get fired up about all the great things alumni can do with and for the university.
So, Mike, thank you so very much. Will you guys give Mike a round of applause?
Hey,
really appreciate
I thank you all. I thank President Grayson for inviting me, and God bless everybody.
Thank you so much for being here. I think that was powerful. Natasha, now you got to bring us home, right? So we're going to take some time here and pause. If we can bring up those poll questions, everybody can answer the poll questions that we're going to bring up from the backside. I think I lost one or two folks. There you go. Where'd you guys attend school? I don't know how many people can. All right, next question. Did everybody get their questions done?
I didn't get the question, so I'm not sure if
Well, you can't answer because
Okay.
you're a panelist, because you're considered the cool people, but the rest of these, no, I'm joking. We can't answer the questions. LaRuby, myself, and you, we can't answer. So Natasha, everybody has had a chance, but I saved you for last because Bernard told me to save the best. And LaRuby, I'm joking, but save you for last, right? If I can just kind of recap, I think we have heard some powerful stuff, right? I think the coolest part of what we have heard, of what's been going on, and there's some poll questions still popping up, but the coolest part of what we have heard of what's going on is all these folks love UDC for lots of different reasons, come from lots of different places and lots of different backgrounds. I did not solicit Mike to talk about money, but Bernard will appreciate that he's talking about money because President Grayson has been asking for money in every email he sends and every time he's talking. But even more than that, as a person who has worked in fundraising, and I worked on capital campaigns that have raised over $3 billion from different institutions, whether they be predominantly white institutions or social service institutions, I can tell you the consistent theme that is true that Mike just talked about is having a consistent amount of the alumni, whether that be school alumni or people that have participated in the programs, give back, right? And so tonight is the first attempt at giving back. We have a panel. President Grayson says, I want to bring the conversation to the alums and let the alums speak, right? And so I could not have done this. President Grayson, he could have talked to you about some of this, but I think the best thing that happened is he and LaRuby talk about how she was doing things for life or death during the COVID timeframe, and really hearing Mike talk about what transformed in the 80s, 14,000 students to where we are today at UDC. What needs to change? What has to change? But also, let's talk about that there's been some consistency in being the oldest HBCU here in the DC area. Natasha, your turn. Please share a little bit about yourself and talk a little bit about how you got to where you are. Guys, we're at 6:30 already. So we're halfway through. And then we're gonna bring Bernard back to say some cool words and then he may jump off, but Natasha, please share.
So my name is Natasha Bennett. I am a triple firebird.
Natasha, don't hide your accent. Don't hide it, okay? Do not hide it. All right.
I do want people to be able to hear me and understand. And so again, triple firebird, love UDC. Fun fact, I got married at UDC.
Oh, wow.
So to tell you my love for my institution and UDC Law School, UDC undergrad, all of it. I am a super, super proud alum. And, just a plug there, while we're talking about giving back and of course, write those checks, but we need alums to give back in terms of their time and service, reconnect with the institution, sign up to go out and recruit. Recruitment could use your help in those big recruitment drives. Tell people about UDC, mentor. So all of those are ways to give back as an alum.
Natasha, they call it time, talents, and treasures.
That's
time,
right.
Talent, okay. So you can give your time, you can give your talent, or you can give your treasures, right? All of them cost.
We accept all of it.
All of them cost, because time has a cost to it. So
absolutely.
All of them cost. So I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Please continue. Please continue.
I am a Jamaican. I grew up, in a poor, area in Jamaica, in the country areas, more or less. I had no parent. My mom had passed on. My father had migrated to England at the time, which a lot of Jamaicans did around that time. And so literally, I didn't have any prospects of going to college or anything like that until a nonprofit organization operating out of Georgia called USAJA Link, under the leadership of Clyde and Cheryl Green, and their sister Rose Brooks, who had a medical missionary going on in Jamaica, and I was serving at the church, and they sponsored me to study here. And that was a long story short. I had no vision that would be possible. And so why UDC? I didn't know anything about schools in DC or anywhere else because I wasn't planning to go to college. I didn't have that foresight or the means to. And so when I got here, obviously, Rose Brooks, who was working with me, she, told me apply for this school, and she was working at Howard at the time. So I applied at Howard as well. Well, UDC responded first, and in immigration and trying to make things move along as quickly as possible. Of course, with that acceptance coming first, it was an easy choice. But the magic happened when I got to UDC, right? Like I said, she had been a long time Howard administrator, so easily. But when I got to UDC, it was a sense of community. Within my first week, I met David Gaston. Y'all know David, he was running the student lounge called the 4.0 Lounge. This idea of excellence and really inspiring students to do better. And I got a job my first week, and that was very transformative because he was just such a go-getter and just such an inspirational individual, and that he was always like, how can we give back, make our community better? He was also a double graduate of UDC. And so working with him, eventually my sponsorship fell apart. And so while I had a 4.0 at that time, I really had no way of continuing my education, but this wonderful community, like I said, that I have had at UDC, my family, made up of my professors, Dr. Moore, Dr. Hill, Dr. Martin, and then administrators like Dr. Epps and Ambassador Antoine. I could go on and on. It was a group of community just came together, like hands outstretched, and just hold each other and held me, right? And ensure that I was able to finish. And the funny thing is, 2 months before I was supposed to graduate, again, I had a almost perfect GPA, and I became homeless 2 months before graduation in undergrad. And Dean Massey and Dr. Epps and everyone pulled together to make sure I was housed, and I finished. And I was senior class president, so I got to deliver our commencement address from the class of 2013. And it was just amazing to see what an institution can do. And that's what my HBCU UDC did for me, in that an HBCU is all about not making you fail. And they didn't allow me to fail. No matter what life challenges were, they rose up and they met them each step of the way, giving me a transformative life experience, showing me what it's like to pass on, and a culture of giving, and just to be there for each other. And the same thing happened when I went to law school. Dean Broderick, she said, you want to go to law school? I heard you're always talking about law school. I've always wanted to be a lawyer. And so I was like, yes. And she was like, well, we're going to offer you a scholarship. And so I went to law school on scholarship the first year, and I was able to maintain it. Obviously, I graduated summa cum laude from law school, same from undergrad with an almost perfect GPA. So I could have gone to any school for law school. Please make that note. And I chose to go to UDC Law School because of its legacy. LaRuby talked about, Jean Camper Khan and Dr. Khan himself, Judge Pryor. Judge Pryor and I developed such a great relationship. I was his TA in law school for all his courses, civil procedure and criminal law. When I graduated law school, I got the Judge Pryor Legacy Award for excellence. And so he's very near and dear to me, and we kept in touch until he passed. May his soul rest in peace. And and Dr. Khan as well. May he rest in peace. He was my professor up until I completed my LLM in 2018. And so just these great people stood for, and the pledge, and just the service, right? I did housing clinic, and I stayed in housing. I am now a supervising attorney in the housing practice at Bread for the City, another nonprofit in DC helping tenants fight eviction.
Can I jump in and I apologize. First of all, can we just applaud her energy? Like, it is so cool to see you so excited and so enthusiastic about being an amazing student. Like, I can't tell you how dope that is, right? That's number one. But number two, I'm hearing a theme here with all of the graduates that I've heard from. All of you all have a level of service, right? In all of your jobs. Mike talked about he works for the city now, but you hear he sits on the boards. LaRuby's talked about she worked in Council 8, but also her service through the mayor's office, right? And I'm hearing you talk about service. Is this something that's embedded at UDC, even at the undergraduate level, or is this something just a community thing?
It's throughout the entire UDC. So like UDC Community College, right? Talk about all the workforce development and certificate programs. UDC undergrad, like, I was did the criminal justice clinic and all of the involvement and the focus, right? And giving back. As you know, UDC Law School is a public interest law school. That's kind of like the dub of it, right? And number 2 in the nation, in terms of like—
Say that again, say that louder, because remember, this is being recorded. So when we put this out, we're gonna put number 2 in the nation. Come on.
But we are, in terms of like public interest, if people want to do public interest work. And so it's, we are a school founded, talk about like going back historically, Micheal Minor, right? Who formed the foundation of our schools. Literally, it was built on how do we make our world a better place by transforming our communities one community.
Say that again. I want you to say that. So you hear me saying repeat these things only because I know you don't understand how transformative those words are. And for the folks that are either here or the folks that are going to watch this afterwards, in the box when we list this on your YouTube or wherever President Grayson wants to put this, or Sylvan wants to put this, or even this, make sure you guys may share this with your law school, right? It is really key that these words continue to resound past this initial conversation. So
absolutely, we were built on service and correcting injustices, right? Like LaRuby pointed out, when Micheal Minor started, the School for Colored Girls, right, to give Black women in DC an opportunity to get an education. That was transformative, realizing that they were cut off. It was not an area for them. There was not a space. And so UDC became that space. And we've always been that space for those people who are underrepresented, disenfranchised, right? And who feel like there's not a space for them. UDC have always been like, we are the space, which is why we had 14,000 students at one point, and why I believe we will get back there, because we've always been.
So let me jump in there, and LaRuby, you can take yourself off mute too, right? Talk to me about why UDC is the space, right? And because that's one of the whys, like why UDC versus Howard or George Washington or Georgetown or American. Why is UDC the space?
So coupled with, I call it, the Holy Trinity, a wonderful, wonderful professors who really care about the students, right? And an environment where administrators care and will lend a hand and pitch in. I think Micheal talked about how the administrators came together to make sure that his stuff was done to get him in class. Like they will go the extra mile for you, right? It's like a big hug, of making sure you're taking care of.
So do you think that's because it's UDC as a whole? Do you think it's HBCU, or do you think it's a combination of things?
It's a combination. I think
if
a combination.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it's a combination, but I think that, for me, my perspective is, UDC is continuing to become the institution that UDC can be. And I think that they're great professors, they're great opportunities, but, the whole of the institution goes beyond just kind of those of us who have the experience. It goes to the perception of the institution. It goes to what we're doing as it relates to DC residents, right? And empowering our kind of local neighborhoods and our local communities and creating a generation generation of educated, you know, born and raised. I think Michael said he was like 6th generation or something like that in the District of Columbia. And so I think that, you know, when UDC has really, and again, I think President Mason under his leadership has done a really good job in locating a facility in Ward 8, the community college. And I think we're still continuing to make sure that those things and that mission of being an HBCU and making sure that non-traditional students, right, folks, our brothers and sisters that are in marginalized communities are able to get a public education and not feel that that public education is sub-tier or not equivalent to the other education that we would get at a Howard or at a Georgetown and you know, GW, and the reality is HBCUs have very different missions than predominantly white institution. And so our goal is to become better at fulfilling our mission. And I think that we are continuing to move in that direction. Again, I have more understanding about that in the law school than I do in the undergraduate school. But I think that's the direction that you're going. And that's why it's important for UDC. And that's why it's important for alumni to really engage and to be a part of the institution, not necessarily because of what the institution gave to you in your experience, but what it is that you can give to the institution so that the future generation of alumni will have different experiences or more experiences than we had when we were privileged to be students.
So we are.
Absolutely.
LaRuby, thank you for that. Natasha, I'm coming back to you. Let me just say again, love your energy. I love it. I'm glad we put you last because you're like, yes, listen, this is why we're a great institution and others. So I really, really appreciate that. If we can bring the poll results up, I'd love to see those really quick. And then LaRuby and Natasha, starting with Natasha, I have 2 questions for you. Why do you stay involved? And would you recommend UDC to folks that are outside of UDC? So first, why do you stay involved? And then would you recommend, and in that would you recommend, how would you recommend the school? So Natasha, I'll start there with you while the poll results come up.
So literally, if that wasn't clear earlier, much has been, you know, there's a saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. And much has been given to me for sure, from undergrad straight throughout. And I've always been very active throughout, right? In undergrad, I was very active. I did, you know, the Criminal Justice Association. I did the Curb Incidents Association. I was a, you know, trustee, student trustee. And so I just stayed involved. And of course, Dave Gaston, like I said, he was all about staying involved. And so I've been fortunate to have met really amazing people who are very involved in UDC. Selvin Waldron, as you know, who is our historian, Mr. President Grayson, who is UDC all the way. And so these people have inspired me to just to keep on the fire line for UDC and to just keep donating my time. One of the things I wish I had a lot more treasures where the money is to donate, as you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And because I choose to do nonprofit work and to do eviction defense, there's not much money. So I give back by being chair of our bylaws and legislative committee for UDCNAS. And donated countless hours in doing that, and wherever else that I can pitch in, I'm gladly always to do it.
Natasha, let me jump in and tell you a quick story. I worked at the Salvation Army as my first nonprofit job, and I was there when we were raising, trying to raise $50 million. I was like, no way. I grew up going to Salvation Army, ringing the kettlebells, other story. Long story short, I went to see a woman. She had been giving $200 a year for 25 years. When she passed, she left us a $3 million life insurance policy. It was the first large gift for the capital campaign. Here's what I say. Just like Mike said, you can give 5, 10, 15, 20. Trust me, all dollars count. So I often tell people, I don't have a lot of money because I'm not a nonprofit. Your time is money because you can't ever get that back. Your time, your talent is money because you can't ever really get that back. And your treasure, it's just like tithing. If you make 100,000, you can only give 20, then give 20 or give 10. I'm not telling you that you have to give $1 million, but remember, $1 is more important than giving 0 if you've got it. So I'm just leaving that there. So go ahead, Natasha, then I want to go to LaRuby, and then I'm going to come back to Bernard to bring us out to a close. Because guess what, guys? We're at 6:50 already. We're at 6:50. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm humbled that you guys have let me listen in on this. I learned more about UDC tonight than I think I've known in my 15 years here in the city. So thank you once again for just letting me moderate. Natasha, say your piece. then LaRuby, then I'm gonna bring Bernard back. Let me say this before you go, Natasha. Let me jump to LaRuby because I want to come back to you and ask you this question. I want you to share why you love UDC, what you'd like to leave us with, and then what do you want us to think about future tests? So think about that. LaRuby, why do you stay involved? If you could give me 2 or 3 more minutes, that would be great. Like, why do you stay involved?
So, you know, I have to tell you that, like, I have not been the best alumni that I can be to the institution, right? And I think, you know, for myself, I had reasons, right, for that, again, specifically because I'm connected to the law school, and my entire journey at the law school and my journey post law school has always been about marginalized communities, Black and brown people, you know, the number of Black and brown students, the number of local students who graduate from UDC, who are matriculating through the law school. And so those were, you know, focal points for me in terms of the effort and energy around supporting, you know, what we, you know, how we support, right? The traditional way of giving to the institution, or for me, a more non-traditional way of identifying, you know, students, Black law students and others who were in the same, you know, position that I was in terms of, you know, oh, it's supplements to this, you know, like, you know, we can't all share the main course book, you know, these books are a couple $100, you know, like, from that perspective. And so, so I recognize, and again, as I've gotten become a better professional and a better understanding of relationships, I've become a better alumni, right? I also think that I've had the opportunity to have different relationships with, you know, with leadership, to be able to do that. So, you know, so why UDC? For me, you know, I would tell anyone because, you know, all the things that I've been able to accomplish post law school have been influenced by UDC in the law school and the experience that I have. And, you know, my mama and cousins and them would probably say that I've done okay, right? Some other folks may not say, but, you know, I've definitely been blessed. And I think that UDC, like most law schools, like, you know, the other 5 HBC law schools in the country, provide for you an opportunity to learn how to practice law unapologetically for Black folk, for marginalized communities. And for me, that's enough for me to want to be a part of any movement or any effort.
Thank you so much for that. Natasha?
All right. So the question was, why UDC?
Yeah.
I'm going to reframe that to be, why not UDC?
There you go.
When it has the top tier undergraduate, graduate, and legal education in the nation, I would say. When it has a super supportive environment that will always be there for you as like a little hug, carrying you the whole way. When it's the most affordable for what you get in the heart of the nation's capital. Why not UDC? It's really it, because it's just the best place to be. And literally, as a Black woman, as a Jamaican, as a foreigner here who came to the city with really no family around, UDC became a family for me, and still is my family. My greatest connection and family is still there, and I still keep in connection because why not? The best is here. And so when you say to me, well, what can we do as an institution? Again, alumni get involved. That's really right now one of the greatest asks. And as Ruby said, I haven't always been the model either, because I think I could have done more as I was going through. And so now my goal is, how can I do more, right? And we'll continue to think that way. And I think I challenge all alumni to think now, forgetting what has been done in the past, what can I do now to meet that call? That for an institution that has given so much to us, how do we now give back to create a better institution for those to come, by giving back to our communities, by giving back to UDC and spreading that word of and being literally an epitome of what service means for our communities and for our future UDC students. And so that's what I would say. Answer the call, alum, and let's rise up and let's lobby the city council for funding. Let's do our part to give our own, you know, the 3 T's, as we heard: time, talent, and treasures, and lobby the city council to match them, and do our best.
Natasha, thank you so very much. So I want to bring this back to the person who came up with this idea and who's partnered with me. And I've been really kind of in the background. First of all, as someone who's moderated lots of panels, I want you guys to understand that my goal here today was for everybody to really hear about the personal perspective. We had 3 very different alums on here today telling 3 very different stories. But as you could kind of hear the fabric woven in all those conversations, it was about service, right? Service jumped through and kind of kept jumping out on the screen, which is why I asked those questions. Why was service so important? And it is clear that there's something being taught at UDC. Number 17 HBCU in the country, number 2 business school in the country, oldest HBCU in DC, and the only public HBCU in DC. All those things came through transformative. And I will tell
Number
you-
2 public interest law school.
Number 2 public interest law school, I'm sorry. And those
country.
things aren't talked about enough. So I hope from today's conversation, if nothing else, you guys feel a sense of pride and you feel a sense of service, right? And I hope that this is but a springboard to other conversations that, you know, President Grayson is going to have. And this will be shared across all your platforms, all your veins. And I would encourage you all for future conversations to invite more of your alumni back to these conversations. Say, let me tell you how powerful this was. And let me tell you how powerful being a UDC alum is. And let me share with you some of the folks that you didn't even know were in our group and how great they are. President Grayson, I'll leave it with you. Thank you guys so much for letting me moderate this panel. I will tell you again, I really enjoyed this, and I'm humbled to have been here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. You did awesome.
Thank you very much.
So can you hear me? Is my mic working? Oh, okay, cool. So I had this long script that I was going to do to close us out. First of all, thank you everybody for joining us. This has exceeded any expectation that I could have possibly had. And we prayed a lot about this. When we started the top of the hour, we stated how much was going on in the background to actually produce this. A lot was going on. I couldn't be more happy with the panel we had tonight. They said a lot of the words that I haven't been able to exude to all of you all as the president over the last 14 months. Thank you, Darnell. Thank you, LaRuby. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We still have a long way to go. It is my #1 mission. It is our executive board's mission. It is the National Alumni Society's mission to elevate all of your stories, to tell all these great things that have happened to all of us and why we love UDC so much. Darnell had asked me to tell my story. That's way too long, and it doesn't need to be done tonight because my panel has done just such a great job of speaking about how great this institution is. I have to always say again, we are the 2nd oldest HBCU in the country, founded in 1851 by Matilda Minor. He gave me a great quote. If you want to look about how great your institution is, you have to look at the product. The product of the University of District of Columbia is its alum. So for tonight, we had 3 great alum come before you to show you the great things that they did. They didn't just go to the law school. They went to undergrad. They're serving our communities. They're looking out for Black and brown people all across the country. I had to give a gratuitous plug to LaRuby May in the chat because she just started a phenomenal law firm that is carrying on the mission of Matilda Minor, of the David A. Clarks, of the people that founded Antioch Law School in our communities to protect people of color. And these are the stories that I want to be able to tell over and over and over again as we continue these alumni connections, as we continue these conversations, hopefully over the next year. One of the things that I do have to plug is that how they do on WPFW, we can't do this without your support. So we just finished the giving campaign, but we still have to ask for you guys to donate more. Even if it's like they said on WPFW all the time, $1 helps us be able to produce these programs and stay relevant in our community. So if you go to www.udcnas.org, on our homepage, you'll see where it says donate now. If you can give $1, if you can give $100, we appreciate that more than you could ever imagine. But what we are trying to do is to be able to provide better programming for all of our alum, for our student body, just to support the overall community in the District of Columbia. With that said, we're at about 60 seconds left. I just want to say again, thank each and every one of you for being on our panel, and thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. God bless you. Good night, y'all.
Thank you. Good night.